Good morning, good evening, no matter where you are in the world or what time of day you're watching this. Um, Hello, my name is Cassandra Exum, and my espionage case study project is Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. I did my best to look up pronunciations of German and Soviet or Russian dialect, but yeah, let's get started. So, to start, I first wanted to define and differentiate between espionage and intelligence. The book gives a great definition on intelligence and great examples of espionage, but for consistency's sake, I wanted to use the same source. So, both of these definitions come from Encyclopedia Britannica. The intelligence definition is similar to the books, so I thought for consistency I would just use the encyclopedia. But espionage is defined as the process of obtaining military, political, commercial, or other secret information by means of spies, secret agents, or illegal monitoring devices. Espionage is sometimes distinguished from the broader category of intelligence gathering by its aggressive nature and its illegality. Intelligence, on the other hand, in government and military operations evaluated information concerning the strength, activities, and probable courses of action of foreign countries or non-state actors that are usually, though not always, enemies or opponents. The term also is used to refer to the collection, analysis, and distribution of such information and to secret intervention in the political or economic affairs of other countries, an activity commonly known as covert action. The one thing I would like to add to this definition is the book. It talks about intelligence as a product and as a method. I would also add that it's its own community, its own agency, and it's its own body. So, the Manhattan Project, what was it? Well, it started as several agencies under President Roosevelt. Initially, the Advisory Committee on Uranium was set up to research uranium's potential role as a weapon. Based on these findings, funding then focused on radioactive isotope separation, also known as uranium enrichment, and nuclear chain reactions. The Advisory Committee on Uranium's name was changed in 1940 to the National Defense Research Committee before finally being renamed to the Office of Scientific Research and Development, or OSRD, in 1941. The Army Corps of Engineers joined the OSRD in 1942 with President Roosevelt's approval, and the project officially morphed into a military initiative. The OSRD formed the Manhattan Engineer District in New York in 1942 and combined with other researchers and scientists on December 28th of 1942 with the goal of weaponizing nuclear energy. Research and related atomic test facilities were set up in New Mexico, Tennessee, Washington, as well as Canada. So it started in response to fears that German scientists had been working on nuclear technology that Adolf Hitler would be prepared to use at any given time. And the Manhattan Project was just the name for the project that wasn't actually located in Manhattan anymore. It was primarily in Los Alamos in New Mexico. So, as the top secret plan to build the bomb took shape in the United States, the Soviet spy ring got wind of it before the FBI even knew of the secret program's existence. Some spies were ideologically motivated, enamored of communist beliefs, while others were motivated by nuclear parity, the idea that no nation had a monopoly on nuclear power in order to prevent a nuclear war. For many years, the depth of Soviet spying was unknown. The big breakthrough began in 1946 when the United States, working with Britain, deciphered the code Moscow used to send its telegraph cables. The cables should have been impossible to decrypt. However, collecting them was easy. The United States government simply acquired copies of all cables openly sent to and from various Soviet embassies and consulates. These messages were encrypted by means known as a one-time pad. This meant that, at least in theory, decrypting them should have been impossible. The Army's Signal Intelligence Service began working on the problem in 1943, and they gradually discovered a Soviet procedural error that allowed many of the messages to be painstakingly decrypted. Portions of messages began to become clear in 1946, and by 1948, numerous messages were being recovered by the team led by Meredith Gardner. Venona, as the decoding project was named, remained an official secret until it was declassified in 1995. Because government authorities did not want it to reveal that they had cracked the Russian code, Venona evidence could not be used in court, but it could trigger investigations and surveillance, hoping to nail suspects in the act of spying or extract a confession from them. From 1948 to 1951, numerous Soviet spies were uncovered and prosecuted this way, including the atomic spies Klaus Fuchs, David Greenglass, and Greenglass's handler Julius Rosenberg, and Rosenberg's wife Ethel. In the summer of 1949, the FBI learned that the secret of the construction of the atom bomb had been stolen and turned over to a foreign power. An immediate investigation was undertaken, which resulted in the identification of Emil Julius Klaus Fuchs, a German-born British atomic scientist. The Soviets successfully tested their first nuclear device, called First Lightning, or codenamed Joe 1 by the United States, on August 29, 1949. The White House, in a solemn statement on September of 1949, relayed this disheartening news, which startled and shocked the nation. Fuchs was arrested by British authorities on February 2, 1950. He admitted his involvement in Soviet atomic espionage, but he claimed he did not know the identity of his American contact. This contact was subsequently identified through FBI investigation as Harry Gold, a Philadelphia chemist. On May 22nd of 1950, Gold confessed his espionage activity to the FBI. Investigator of Harry Gold's admissions led to the identification of David Greenglass, a U.S. Army enlisted man and Soviet agent who had been assigned by the Army to, you guessed it, Los Alamos, New Mexico, in 1944 and 1945. Gold stated that he had picked up espionage material from Greenglass during June of 1945 on instructions of John, his Soviet principal. Now, John was subsequently identified as Anatoly Yakovlev, former Soviet vice consul in New York City, who left the United States in December of 1946. Interrogation of Greenglass and his wife Ruth resulted in admissions of espionage activity under the instructions of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, brother-in-law and sister, respectively, of David Greenglass. Julius Rosenberg was an engineer for the U.S. Army Signal Corps who was born in New York on May 12, 1918. His wife, born Ethel Greenglass, also of New York, on September 28 of 1915, worked as a secretary. The couple met as members of the Young Communist League and married in 1939 and had 2 sons. These 2 sons played a large role in their public perception during the trial. The Rosenbergs were often portrayed as mother and father, and they had family pictures, and there was sort of a bond formed by the public and the Rosenbergs as a family unit. The Rosenbergs, former members of the American Communist Party, were implicated by Ethel's brother-in-law, David Greenglass, and a Philadelphia chemist, Harry Gold, who, after admitting their own espionage activities, served as the primary witnesses in the trial. So Greenglass was obtaining details and was handing them over to Rosenberg, who was providing these to the Soviet Union. And Ethel's role in this was that her own brother, David Greenglass, reported that she was typing the notes for Julius that he was passing to the Soviet Union. So her own brother implicated her. In 1945, Rosenberg was fired from his job at the Signal Corps after his membership in the Communist Party came to light. He worked for the Emerson Radio Corporation and then co-founded the GNR Engineering Company, a machine shop with Greenglass. In 1950, when the atomic spy ring unraveled with the arrest of Klaus, Fuchs, and Harry Gold, Greenglass implicated Rosenberg. On July 17th of 1950, Julius was arrested. 1 month later, Ethel was arrested. Both were charged with conspiracy to commit espionage. The couple was convicted on March 29, 1951, and sentenced to death on April 5th for violating Section 2 of the 1917 Espionage Act, which prohibits providing classified information related to U.S. national defense and security to foreign governments. Although in recent years, evidence has confirmed that Julius Rosenberg was indeed a Soviet agent, other recently declassified documents have shown the strong possibility of Ethel's innocence. It was the testimony of David Greenglass in the 1951 trial which implicated Ethel. But before a secret grand jury in 1950, Greenglass affirmed, and I quote, "I said before and say it again. Honestly, this is a fact. I never spoke to my sister about this at all." End quote. By cooperating with federal agents and proving the guilt of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, Greenglass and Gold were given lighter sentences. Greenglass received 15 years in prison in a separate trial, and Gold received 30 years in prison. The courts also made clear that if either of the Rosenbergs would admit to their espionage, they too could avoid execution. But the couple, loyal to their cause and riding a wave of public support, continued to adamantly state their innocence until their death on the day of June 19, 1953. Ethel and Julius were the only American civilians executed for espionage activity during the Cold War. Here's my works cited. I did do an MLA style citations. So thank you very much, guys.